Chief Thunderwolf stood tall on the rocky cliff overlooking his tribe's camp below. The morning sun painted the desert landscape in shades of gold and red. His prized battle horse, Stormrunner, pawed the ground beside him, sensing his master's troubled thoughts. For 3 years, Thunderwolf had led his people through countless battles against settlers and rival tribes. Stormrunner had been his faithful companion, carrying him safely through every fight. The black stallion was more than just a horse, he was a symbol of the chief's power and courage. But now everything was changing. The white settlers were pushing deeper into Apache territory. Food was becoming scarce and his people were growing hungry. Winter was approaching, and the tribe needed supplies desperately. They had traded away most of their valuable possessions just to survive. Thunderwolf's advisors had been pressuring him to make difficult decisions. Old Bear, his closest friend and war chief, approached him that morning with serious news. "The Martinez family wants to make a trade," Old Bear said, his weathered face grave. "They offer food, blankets, and tools for the winter. Enough to keep our people alive until spring." Thunderwolf nodded, knowing there would be more to this proposal. "What do they want in return?" "Your horse," Old Bear replied quietly. "And they offer something else. Maria Martinez, the widow who lost her husband in last month's raid. They say she can work for our tribe, help with cooking, cleaning, and caring for the children." The chief's jaw tightened. The Martinez family had lost their patriarch when a group of young Apache warriors attacked their ranch without Thunderwolf's permission. The chief had been angry about the unauthorized raid, knowing it would bring trouble to his people. Thunderwolf looked at Stormrunner, running his hand along the horse's powerful neck. The animal had saved his life more times than he could count. During the Battle of Twisted Canyon, Stormrunner had leaped across a 20-foot ravine to escape enemy fire. In the raid on Fort Henderson, the horse had charged through burning buildings to rescue wounded Apache warriors. "She is just a servant," Old Bear continued, "a woman to help with daily tasks. The Martinez family wants to rid themselves of the burden of caring for her. They see it as a fair trade, your horse for their food supplies and a worker." Thunderwolf knew his people were watching him. Children were crying from hunger at night. The elderly were getting weaker each day. His own wife, Silver Moon, had been giving her food portions to their young son, Little Fox. "Bring the woman to me," Thunderwolf decided. "I want to see this widow before I make any trade." That afternoon, Maria Martinez was brought to the Apache camp. She was a small woman in her 30s, with dark hair and quiet brown eyes. Her clothes were simple and worn, but she held herself with dignity despite her circumstances. She didn't cower or plead when she stood before the intimidating Apache chief. Thunderwolf studied her carefully. Most captives or servants trembled in his presence, but this woman met his gaze steadily. There was something in her eyes, not fear, but a quiet strength that surprised him. "You know why you are here?" Thunderwolf asked in broken Spanish. Maria nodded. "My husband's family wants to trade me for your horse. They say I will work for your people. And you agree to this?" "I have no choice," she replied simply. "But I will work honestly if treated fairly." Thunderwolf was struck by her directness. Most people either begged for mercy or tried to bargain when faced with such a situation. This woman simply stated the facts without emotion or complaint. Old Bear whispered urgently in the chief's ear. "The Martinez family waits for your answer. Winter storms are coming soon. We need those supplies now." Thunderwolf looked once more at Stormrunner, then back at Maria. The decision would change everything for both of them, though neither knew it yet. The chief's reputation was built on his fierce warrior spirit and his magnificent horse. Trading away Stormrunner would be seen as a sign of weakness by some, but letting his people starve would be far worse. "I will consider this trade," Thunderwolf announced. "The woman will stay in our camp tonight. Tomorrow I will give my final decision." As evening fell, Maria was given a place to sleep near the women's lodge. She helped prepare the evening meal without being asked, working quietly alongside the Apache women. Thunderwolf noticed how she handled herself, respectfully but without servility, competent but not pushy. That night, Thunderwolf sat by his fire, staring at Stormrunner tethered nearby. The horse seemed to sense something was wrong, occasionally looking toward his master with intelligent dark eyes. The chief knew that by tomorrow evening, either his people would have enough food for winter, or he would still have his beloved horse but watch his tribe suffer. The decision would test everything Thunderwolf believed about leadership, sacrifice, and honor.
He had no idea that the quiet widow would soon challenge his understanding of strength and integrity in ways he never imagined possible.
Dawn broke with a cold wind that promised early winter. Thunderwolf had barely slept, wrestling with his decision. He walked through the camp, seeing the faces of his people, hollow cheeks on the children, worried expressions on the mothers, and the stoic acceptance of the warriors who knew their chief faced an impossible choice. Stormrunner nickered softly as Thunderwolf approached. The chief pressed his forehead against the horse's neck, feeling the warmth and strength of his faithful companion. "Old friend," he whispered, "our people need us to sacrifice." The Martinez family arrived at midday with 3 loaded wagons. Don Carlos Martinez, the family patriarch's brother, stepped down from the lead wagon with a satisfied smile. Behind him came his sons and several ranch hands, all armed and watchful. "Chief Thunderwolf," Don Carlos called out in Spanish, "have you decided? Our offer stands: food, blankets, tools, and medicine for your horse, and the agreement to take the woman." Thunderwolf studied the wagons. They contained enough supplies to last his tribe through the hardest months of winter: sacks of corn, dried meat, warm blankets, metal tools, and precious medicine that could save lives. It was more than they could obtain through months of raiding. "Show me everything," Thunderwolf demanded. Don Carlos proudly displayed the goods. There were cooking pots, knives, ammunition, flour, beans, and thick woolen blankets. For a people facing starvation, it was a treasure beyond measure. Old Bear stood beside his chief, understanding the weight of the moment. "It is enough to save us all," he said quietly in Apache. Thunderwolf nodded slowly. He looked across the camp to where Maria sat helping an Apache woman mend clothes. She worked with careful attention to detail, treating the torn garments as if they were precious silk instead of worn buckskin. "I accept your trade," Thunderwolf announced. A cheer went up from the Martinez family, but the Apache camp remained silent. Many of the warriors looked troubled, seeing their chief give up the symbol of his power. Stormrunner would leave with strangers, and a Mexican widow would remain among them. Don Carlos gestured to his men, who began unloading the wagons. "Excellent. And the woman understands she belongs to your tribe now. She will work hard and cause no trouble." Thunderwolf's expression darkened at the word belongs. In Apache culture, even captives had rights and dignity. The casual way Don Carlos spoke of Maria as property stirred something uncomfortable in the chief's chest. As the afternoon progressed, Thunderwolf watched Maria's behavior carefully. When Apache children gathered around the strange supplies, she gently showed them how to identify different grains and spices. When an elderly woman struggled to lift a heavy pot, Maria quietly helped without being asked. "She seems useful," Silvermoon, Thunderwolf's wife, observed. "But can we trust her? She is Mexican, and her people have killed ours." "Her husband's family trades her like a used blanket," Thunderwolf replied thoughtfully. "Perhaps she has more reason to distrust them than us." The moment of final exchange arrived as the sun began to set. Don Carlos held Stormrunner's reins while Thunderwolf performed the traditional farewell to a warrior's horse. He spoke to Stormrunner in Apache, thanking him for his loyalty and courage. The horse seemed to understand something was wrong. He pulled against the unfamiliar hands, looking back at Thunderwolf with confusion and distress. The sight struck the chief like a physical blow. "Come, come," Don Carlos said impatiently. "The horse will adjust to new masters. They always do." But as the Martinez family prepared to leave, Stormrunner reared up and broke free from their loose grip. The horse galloped back to Thunderwolf, pressing against his chest and refusing to be led away again. Don Carlos grew angry. "Control your animal. Our deal is made." Thunderwolf felt his heart breaking as he firmly took Stormrunner's head in his hands. "You must go, my brother," he whispered. "Our people need this trade." It took 4 men and strong ropes to finally lead Stormrunner away. The horse's cries echoed across the desert as the Martinez wagons disappeared into the gathering darkness. Many Apache warriors turned away, unable to watch their chief's magnificent horse being dragged off by strangers. That evening, as the tribe shared their first full meal in weeks, Thunderwolf sat apart staring into the fire. The supplies would save lives, but the cost felt enormous. He had traded away not just a horse, but a piece of his identity as a war chief. Maria approached quietly, carrying a bowl of stew. "Chief Thunderwolf," she said respectfully in Spanish, "you should eat." "I am not hungry," he replied without looking up. She sat down at a respectful distance. In my village, we have a saying: a leader who sacrifices for his people gains more honor than one who keeps his treasures while others suffer. Thunderwolf finally looked at her. You think I made the right choice? I think you made a difficult choice, Maria answered carefully. Your horse was beautiful and strong, but your people are alive tonight because of what you gave up. The chief studied this widow who spoke so plainly about sacrifice. She had lost her husband, been abandoned by his family, and now lived among strangers. Yet she showed no self-pity or bitterness. And what about you? Thunderwolf asked. You were traded like goods at a market. Are you not angry? Maria considered the question seriously. Anger changes nothing. I prefer to judge people by how they treat me, not by how others have treated me. Her words surprised Thunderwolf. Most people in her situation would be full of rage or despair. This woman seemed to possess an inner strength that had nothing to do with physical power or possessions. As the night grew deeper, Thunderwolf began to realize that the trade might have brought his tribe more than just winter supplies. The quiet Mexican widow might teach them something about strength that had nothing to do with battle horses or warrior pride. Winter settled over the Apache camp like a heavy blanket. The supplies from the Martinez family proved their worth as bitter winds and snow swept across the desert. But Thunderwolf found himself watching Maria Martinez more closely each day, puzzled by her behavior. Unlike other captives or servants the tribe had known, Maria never tried to escape. She had multiple opportunities, moments when she worked alone gathering wood or water, times when the camp was distracted by hunting parties or ceremonies. Yet she always returned, working steadily without complaint or apparent resentment. She is strange, complained Spotted Hawk, one of the younger warriors. Mexican servants should show fear and obedience. This one acts as if she chose to be here. Thunderwolf had noticed this too. Maria moved through the camp with quiet confidence, helping where needed but never pushing herself forward. She learned Apache words quickly and taught Spanish phrases to children who were curious about her language. The first real test of Maria's character came during a fierce blizzard that trapped the tribe in their shelters for 3 days. Food supplies ran low and tensions rose as people worried about rationing their precious winter stores. Old Bear approached Thunderwolf with concerning news. Some families are hoarding extra food, he reported. They take more than their share from the common supplies, leaving less for others. Thunderwolf's anger flared. Who dares steal from their own people during hard times? Sharpclaw and his sons, Old Bear replied reluctantly. They claim they need more because they are stronger and work harder than the elders and children. This was a serious challenge to Thunderwolf's leadership. Sharpclaw was a respected warrior, but had always been jealous of the chief's authority. Taking extra food during a crisis was not just theft, it was an attack on the tribe's unity. Thunderwolf prepared to confront Sharpclaw directly, but Maria appeared at his lodge entrance. Chief, she said quietly, may I speak? What is it, woman? I have noticed the food situation. Perhaps there is a way to solve this without creating enemies within your tribe. Thunderwolf frowned. This is Apache business. You are Mexican. Yes, Maria agreed simply. But hungry people are the same everywhere. In my village, we faced similar problems during hard times. Despite his irritation at her interference, Thunderwolf found himself curious. What would you suggest? Maria explained her idea carefully. Instead of confronting Sharpclaw publicly and creating shame that might lead to lasting hatred, she proposed a different approach. What if the chief organized a public ceremony where every family would bring their remaining food supplies to be blessed and redistributed equally? Sharpclaw cannot refuse without admitting he has been hoarding, Maria pointed out. And you maintain your authority while giving him a chance to save face. Thunderwolf initially dismissed the suggestion. Apache chiefs dealt with problems through direct confrontation and displays of strength. But as he thought about it, he realized Maria's approach might actually be wiser. The ceremony was announced for the next day. As Maria had predicted, Sharpclaw appeared with his family carrying significantly more food than he had claimed to possess. The redistribution was done publicly, ensuring everyone received equal shares. But Sharpclaw was not finished testing the chief's leadership. During the ceremony, he made a pointed comment loud enough for everyone to hear. It is strange that our chief now takes advice from Mexican women. Perhaps Thunderwolf has grown soft since trading away his war horse. A dangerous silence fell over the gathering. This was a direct challenge that Thunderwolf could not ignore without losing respect among his warriors. Before Thunderwolf could respond, Maria stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried clearly across the crowd. In my husband's village, there was a man who constantly questioned the leader's decisions. He believed criticism made him appear strong and wise. The camp listened intently. Even Sharpclaw remained silent, curious about where this story would lead. One day, Maria continued, bandits attacked the village. The critic had many opinions about how to fight them, but when the battle began, he hid while others risked their lives. The villagers learned that constant criticism is often a mask for cowardice. She looked directly at Sharpclaw. True strength supports the leader when times are hard, rather than undermining him when he makes difficult choices for his people's survival. Sharpclaw's face reddened with anger, but he could not respond without proving Maria's point. Several warriors nodded appreciatively at her words. She had defended Thunderwolf's honor while making Sharpclaw look foolish, all without raising her voice or showing disrespect. After the ceremony, Thunderwolf found himself deeply impressed by Maria's handling of the situation. She had solved a potentially dangerous conflict using intelligence and words rather than force. "You defended my honor," he told her privately. "You saved my life by accepting me into your tribe," Maria replied. "Honor protects honor." That evening, Silver Moon approached her husband with a troubled expression. "The Mexican woman grows too bold," she warned. "She speaks in tribal gatherings and influences decisions. Some women whisper that you listen to her more than your own advisors." Thunderwolf considered his wife's concerns. Silver Moon was right that Maria's influence was growing, but not in ways that seemed harmful to the tribe. If anything, her suggestions had proven remarkably wise. "She has good judgment," Thunderwolf said carefully. "She is not Apache," Silver Moon replied firmly. "Her loyalty will always be questionable. Remember, her people and our people are enemies." The conversation planted seeds of doubt in Thunderwolf's mind. Was he trusting Maria too quickly? Were his own people beginning to see him as weak for accepting counsel from a Mexican widow? These questions became more pressing when scouts brought disturbing news. A group of Mexican soldiers was approaching Apache territory, apparently searching for something or someone. Thunderwolf wondered if they were coming for Maria, and if so, what that might mean for his tribe's safety. The chief realized that his decision to accept Maria in trade for Stormrunner had created complications he never anticipated. The quiet widow was proving to be far more complex and influential than anyone had expected, and her presence was beginning to change the dynamics of tribal leadership in ways that both impressed and concerned him. The Mexican soldiers arrived at dawn, their uniforms bright against the desert landscape. Captain Rodriguez led 20 armed men who rode into view of the Apache camp with military precision. Thunderwolf watched from a high ridge as the soldiers made camp near a water source 2 miles away. "They fly a white flag," Old Bear observed through his spyglass. "They want to talk, not fight." Thunderwolf's jaw tightened. What do they want in our territory? Within hours they had their answer. A lone rider approached under a truce flag, calling out in Spanish that Captain Rodriguez requested a meeting with Chief Thunder. Wolf. The message was clear. The soldiers were searching for Maria Martinez Thunder. Wolf gathered his war council immediately. The lodge filled with his most trusted advisors, their faces grim as they discussed the situation. "We should return the woman," Sharpclaw argued predictably. "She brings us nothing but trouble. These soldiers could attack if we refuse their demands." "Maria has done good work for our tribe," countered Old Bear. "It would be dishonorable to give her up, like a piece of property." Thunderwolf remained silent, thinking. He looked toward the women's area where Maria worked calmly, apparently unaware that soldiers had come for her. She was teaching Apache children a Spanish song while helping repair winter clothing. "Bring her here," Thunderwolf decided. "She should know what is happening." When Maria entered the council lodge, her composure remained steady despite seeing the serious faces around her. Thunderwolf explained about the soldiers and their apparent mission. "Captain Rodriguez," Maria said thoughtfully, "I know this man. He was my husband's friend before the troubles between our peoples grew worse." "What does he want with you?" Thunderwolf asked directly. Maria hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Before my husband died, he discovered something that could bring peace between Mexicans and Apaches. Captain Rodriguez may believe I know these secrets." The revelation surprised everyone in the lodge. Sharpclaw leaned forward aggressively. What secrets? Speak plainly, woman. My husband found evidence that certain Mexican officials were deliberately causing conflicts between settlers and Apache tribes, Maria explained. They wanted the fighting to continue so they could seize land from both sides during the chaos. Old Bear's eyes widened. Your husband was going to expose these officials? Yes, but he was killed before he could present his evidence. I believe Captain Rodriguez thinks I have my husband's papers. Thunderwolf studied Maria's face intently. Do you have these papers? Yes, she admitted quietly. Hidden in my belongings. The lodge erupted in urgent whispers. This information could change everything about the relationship between Apaches and Mexican settlers, but it also made Maria extremely valuable and dangerous to powerful people who wanted the truth buried. Sharpclaw stood up angrily. You see, this woman brings enemies to our camp. We should give her to the soldiers before they decide to take her by force. Sit down, Thunderwolf commanded coldly. He turned back to Maria. Why did you not tell me about these papers before? I was not sure you would believe me, Maria answered honestly. And I feared what might happen if the wrong people learned I possessed them. Thunderwolf felt the weight of another impossible decision. Keeping Maria meant protecting evidence that could bring peace, but it also meant defying armed soldiers and potentially putting his tribe in danger. Giving her up meant abandoning someone who had served his people faithfully, but it might keep his tribe safe from Mexican military retaliation. What do you want us to do? He asked Maria directly. I want to do what is right, she replied simply. If these papers can prevent future bloodshed between our peoples, they should be revealed. But I will not ask your tribe to risk themselves for my husband's mission. Her answer impressed Thunderwolf deeply. Most people in her situation would beg for protection or try to bargain for their safety. Maria was thinking about what would be best for everyone, even if it cost her everything. The council will decide, Thunderwolf announced. Everyone will speak their opinion. The debate lasted hours. Warriors argued about honor, safety, and the wisdom of trusting Mexican promises of peace. Some wanted to use Maria's papers as bargaining tools. Others insisted the tribe should stay completely out of Mexican political disputes. Finally, Thunderwolf made his choice. We will meet with Captain Rodriguez, but Maria will decide for herself whether to go with him or stay with our tribe. That afternoon, Thunderwolf rode out to meet the Mexican soldiers with a small escort. Captain Rodriguez was a weathered man in his 40s with intelligent eyes and a cautious manner. Chief Thunderwolf, the captain said respectfully in Spanish, I thank you for agreeing to meet. You seek the widow Maria Martinez, Thunderwolf replied directly. Yes. Her husband was my friend, and I believe she possesses information that could help both our peoples avoid future conflicts. Thunderwolf studied the captain's face carefully. And if she chooses not to come with you? Captain Rodriguez sighed. I hope she will see the importance of her husband's work, but I will not take her by force if you offer her your protection. The answer surprised Thunderwolf. He had expected threats or demands, not this respectful approach. You may speak with her, Thunderwolf decided, but in our camp with my warriors present, she will choose freely. That evening, Captain Rodriguez sat by the Apache campfire, sharing a meal and speaking with Maria in quiet Spanish. Thunderwolf watched their interaction carefully, noting how the captain treated Maria with genuine respect and concern. Your husband died believing he could make peace, Captain, Rodriguez told Maria. His evidence could expose the men who profit from this endless fighting. And what would happen to me if I reveal these secrets? Maria asked. I cannot promise you will be safe, the captain admitted honestly. Powerful men will want to silence you. But doing nothing guarantees the fighting will continue, and more innocent people will die. Thunderwolf found himself respecting the captain's honesty. The man was not making false promises or trying to manipulate Maria with lies about guaranteed safety. The decision would ultimately be Maria's, but Thunderwolf realized he hoped she would choose to stay. The quiet widow had become more valuable to his tribe than he had ever imagined, not as a servant but as a wise counselor, whose integrity was becoming clear to everyone around her. Maria requested 3 days to consider Captain Rodriguez's proposal. During this time, the Mexican soldiers remained camped at a respectful distance, making no aggressive moves. Thunderwolf used these days to observe Maria more closely. trying to understand the woman who had become so central to his tribe's daily life. On the first morning, he watched as Maria worked with the children. Little Fox, Thunderwolf's own son, had grown particularly attached to her. She was teaching him to weave baskets using both Apache and Mexican techniques, combining the methods to create stronger, more beautiful designs. "Maria," Little Fox asked in his mixture of Apache and Spanish, "will you leave us?" "I do not know yet, little warrior," she answered gently. Sometimes adults must make very difficult choices. Thunderwolf noticed how she never lied to children, even when the truth was complicated or painful. Many adults would have given false reassurances, but Maria respected even young minds enough to be honest. Later that day, Thunderwolf found Maria sitting alone, reading from a leather pouch, the papers her husband had died protecting. Her face was grave as she studied the documents. "Heavy reading?" Thunderwolf asked, settling down nearby. Maria looked up, her eyes troubled. "My husband documented everything carefully. Names, dates, payments made to officials who arranged conflicts between settlers and Apache tribes, men who grew rich while families on both sides died. And you believe Captain Rodriguez will use this information honestly?" "I believe he wants peace," Maria replied. "But wanting something and achieving it are very different things." Thunderwolf studied her profile as she gazed across the desert. "You could destroy those papers. Stay here, live quietly, forget about your husband's mission. Could you forget about your people's honor?" Maria asked in return. The question struck Thunderwolf deeply. Honor was the foundation of everything he believed in as an Apache leader. Maria was suggesting that her own sense of honor was equally strong, tied to completing her dead husband's work for peace. That evening brought unexpected drama. Sharpclaw had been drinking heavily and decided to confront Maria publicly about the danger she was bringing to the tribe. "Mexican witch!" he shouted, stumbling toward the fire where Maria sat with other women. "You bring soldiers to our camp, hide secrets that could get us all killed." The women around Maria tensed, looking toward Thunderwolf for guidance. But before the chief could intervene, Maria stood and faced Sharpclaw calmly. "You are drunk and angry," she said simply, "but your anger is not really about me." Sharpclaw swayed, confused by her peaceful response to his aggression. "What are you talking about, woman?" "You are angry because you see your chief making decisions you do not understand," Maria continued. "You feel powerless, so you attack someone you think is weaker than yourself." Thunderwolf watched in fascination as Maria continued speaking to Sharpclaw in a steady, unthreatening voice. "In my village there was a man like you," she told him. Strong, brave in battle, but frightened by changes he could not control. He drank to feel powerful again and attacked those who seemed different or threatening. "I am not frightened of anything," Sharpclaw protested, but his voice had lost some of its aggressive edge. "Of course not," Maria agreed. "But perhaps you are concerned about your tribe's future. That shows wisdom, not weakness." By treating his hostility as understandable concern rather than personal attack, Maria was diffusing Sharpclaw's anger. Thunderwolf realized she was using the same technique she had employed during the food hoarding crisis, addressing the real problem beneath the surface behavior. "Your chief faces difficult choices," Maria told Sharpclaw. "He traded his beloved horse to keep your people alive through winter. Now he must decide whether to risk your safety for the chance of lasting peace. These are the burdens of leadership." Sharpclaw looked confused, as if he had expected an argument and found himself in a thoughtful conversation instead. "The chief should not have to ask advice from outsiders," he said, but with less conviction. "Good leaders listen to many voices before making important decisions," Maria replied. "That shows strength, not weakness." Thunderwolf intervened at this point, helping Sharpclaw back to his lodge before the warrior could say something he would regret while sober. But the chief was deeply impressed by how Maria had handled the confrontation. The next day brought more visitors. Don Carlos Martinez arrived with several armed men, having heard about the Mexican soldiers camped nearby. "Chief Thunderwolf," Don Carlos called out arrogantly, "I demand the return of my property." Thunderwolf's expression darkened at the word property. "What property do you speak of?" "The woman Maria." "She belongs to my family. These soldiers have no right to negotiate with you about our servant." Captain Rodriguez had ridden over from the soldiers' camp upon seeing Don Carlos arrive. The confrontation between the two Mexican groups was immediate and hostile. "Maria Martinez is not property," Captain Rodriguez said firmly. She is a Mexican citizen with rights under our law. She is a widow with no family and no means, Don Carlos retorted. My family has provided for her, and we traded her honestly to these Indians for valuable goods. Thunderwolf watched this argument with growing anger. Both Mexican men were discussing Maria as if she was not present, as if her own wishes and feelings were irrelevant. Enough. Thunderwolf's voice cut through the argument like a blade. Both Mexican groups fell silent. The woman Maria will speak for herself, the chief declared. Apache people do not treat human beings as property to be traded or claimed. Maria stepped forward, looking first at Don Carlos, then at Captain Rodriguez, and finally at Thunderwolf. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. Don Carlos, your family traded me away when I became inconvenient. You have no claim on my life or my choices. Don Carlos's face reddened with anger, but Maria continued before he could interrupt. Captain Rodriguez, my husband believed in peace and justice. If his evidence can help achieve those things, then I will help you present it to the proper authorities. Thunderwolf felt something twist in his chest as he realized Maria had decided to leave with the soldiers. But she was not finished speaking. However, Maria said, looking directly at Thunderwolf, I have found honor and respect among the Apache people. If Chief Thunderwolf will permit it, I would like to return to this tribe after I have completed my husband's mission. The request surprised everyone, including Thunderwolf himself. Maria was not just choosing between Mexican factions, she was choosing to make the Apache tribe her true home. Thunderwolf's mind raced as he processed Maria's unexpected request. She wanted to leave to fulfill her husband's mission, but she also wanted to return to the Apache tribe as her chosen home. No captive or servant had ever made such a request. Don Carlos erupted in fury. This is impossible. The woman belongs to my family by right of marriage law. She cannot choose to live among savages. Watch your tongue, Thunderwolf warned dangerously, his hand moving to his knife handle. Captain Rodriguez stepped between the two men. Don Carlos, you traded away any family claims when you exchanged her for goods. Under Mexican law, Maria is free to make her own choices. She has no money, no property, no family support, Don Carlos argued. She will starve or become a burden on others. That is her decision to make, Captain Rodriguez replied firmly. Thunderwolf studied Maria's face. She stood calmly despite the heated argument swirling around her, waiting for his response to her request. You wish to return to us after completing your mission? Thunderwolf asked her directly. Yes, if you will have me, Maria replied. I have found more respect and kindness here than I ever knew in my husband's family. Old Bear stepped forward, speaking quietly in Apache to Thunderwolf. Chief, the people have grown fond of her. She works hard, causes no trouble, and shows wisdom in her advice. Silver Moon, however, approached with different concerns. Husband accepting her back would mean she is truly one of us, not just a servant or captive. Are you prepared for that change? Thunderwolf realized his wife was right. If Maria returned by choice after being free to leave, she would no longer be a servant traded for goods. She would be a tribal member who had earned her place through service and character. We will discuss this when you return, Thunderwolf told Maria. If you choose to come back, you will be welcomed. Don Carlos made one final attempt to assert control. I will not permit this. The Martinez family has rights. Your rights ended when you traded her away, Thunderwolf interrupted coldly. Now you will leave my territory before I forget that you came here under a flag of truce. Don Carlos recognized the deadly seriousness in Thunderwolf's voice. After glaring at everyone present, he mounted his horse and rode away with his men, shouting threats about reporting this incident to Mexican authorities. Captain Rodriguez watched the family depart with obvious relief. Don Carlos has many enemies among honest officials, he told Thunderwolf. His threats carry little weight with people who matter. That evening, the tribe held a ceremony to honor Maria's departure. It was an unusual situation. Typically, captives or servants simply left, but Maria had become something more to the Apache people. Little Fox presented her with a small carved horse he had made himself. So you remember us, he said solemnly. Other tribal members offered gifts, a warm blanket, dried meat for her journey, and a beautifully crafted knife in a beaded sheath. Thunderwolf was moved by his people's genuine affection for the Mexican widow. Silver Moon approached Maria privately before the ceremony ended. Thunderwolf watched from a distance as his wife spoke earnestly with Maria. though he could not hear their words. "I have not always trusted you," Silver Moon admitted to Maria. "A wife protects her husband from influences that might weaken his leadership." "I understand," Maria replied simply. "You love your husband and your people. That creates wisdom, not suspicion." "My husband has changed since you came here," Silver Moon continued. "He thinks more carefully before acting, considers different solutions to problems. Some changes are good." Maria waited respectfully for Silver Moon to continue. "If you return to us, it will not be as a servant or outsider," Silver Moon said seriously. "You will be expected to truly belong to this tribe, to put Apache interest before all others." "Can you do this?" "I have already been doing this," Maria answered honestly. "When I defended your husband's honor against Sharp Claw, when I helped solve the food crisis, when I chose to tell the truth about my husband's papers despite the danger, I was thinking of what was best for your people." Silver Moon studied Maria's face carefully. "And if Mexican soldiers come to fight us? If your own people become our enemies? Then I will stand with the Apache," Maria replied without hesitation. "This tribe showed me kindness when my own family cast me aside. Loyalty follows where it is earned." Silver Moon nodded slowly, apparently satisfied with the answer. The next morning, Maria prepared to leave with Captain Rodriguez and his soldiers. She carried few possessions: the precious papers, the gifts from her Apache friends, and the simple clothes she wore. Thunderwolf walked with her to where the soldiers waited. "Your husband's mission may succeed or fail," he told her, "but you have already proven your own worth." "How so?" Maria asked. "You showed my people that strength comes from character, not from possessions or position," Thunderwolf replied. "When I traded Stormrunner for winter supplies, I thought I was giving up something valuable for something necessary. I did not realize I was gaining something even more precious." Maria looked puzzled. "What did you gain?" "A teacher," Thunderwolf said simply. "You taught me that a leader's greatest strength is not his war horse or his weapons, but his ability to make decisions based on wisdom and honor rather than pride." As Maria mounted the horse Captain Rodriguez provided, Thunderwolf made a decision that surprised even himself. "Captain Rodriguez," he called out, "when Maria's mission is complete, I will send Apache warriors to escort her safely back to our territory. She will not travel alone through dangerous country." The captain nodded approvingly. "Chief Thunderwolf, if Maria's evidence helps bring peace between our peoples, perhaps we can arrange regular meetings to maintain that peace." Thunderwolf considered this possibility. "If you prove to be men of honor, such meetings could benefit everyone." As the soldiers rode away with Maria, many Apache people watched from the camp. Some were sad to see her go. Others were curious about whether she would truly return. Sharp Claw approached Thunderwolf as the dust settled. "Chief, I owe you an apology," he said formally. "I questioned your wisdom in keeping the Mexican woman. I was wrong." "What changed your mind?" Thunderwolf asked. "She could have told the soldiers about our winter camps, our water sources, our defenses," Sharp Claw replied. "Instead, she protected our secrets while pursuing her own mission. That is the behavior of a true tribal member." Thunderwolf nodded, realizing that Maria had indeed proven her loyalty in ways that went beyond words or promises. Old Bear joined them, watching the soldiers disappear into the distance. "Do you think she will return, my chief?" Thunderwolf thought about everything he had learned about Maria's character during her time with the tribe. "Yes," he said confidently. "She will return, and when she does, we will be ready to welcome her home." The chief had no way of knowing that Maria's mission would take her into deadly danger, testing her courage and integrity in ways that would prove whether she truly deserved the trust he had placed in her. 3 months passed before Thunderwolf received word about Maria's mission. The news came through Apache scouts who traded with friendly Mexican settlements. The reports were both encouraging and alarming. Maria's evidence had reached the Mexican capital, where honest officials were investigating the corruption her husband had documented. Several powerful men had been arrested for deliberately inciting conflicts between settlers and Apache tribes for personal profit, but Maria herself had disappeared. "Some say she was killed by the corrupt officials' allies," reported Swift Eagle, the scout who brought the news. "Others believe she escaped and is hiding until the danger passes." Thunderwolf felt a deep concern that surprised him with its intensity. During Maria's absence, he had thought often about her wisdom and courage. The tribe had continued to prosper using many of the approaches she had suggested for solving conflicts and managing resources. We should send warriors to search for her, suggested Old Bear. Where would we look? Thunderwolf replied practically. Mexico is vast, and we do not know where she might be hiding. But fate would soon answer that question in an unexpected way. 4 days later, Apache sentries spotted a lone rider approaching their territory. The figure was small and moved with obvious exhaustion, barely staying mounted on a tired horse. As the rider drew closer, Thunderwolf's heart leaped with recognition. Maria had returned, but she was clearly in desperate condition. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her face was gaunt with hunger and fatigue, and her horse was nearly dead from hard travel. Thunderwolf rode out to meet her personally, reaching her just as she swayed dangerously in the saddle. He caught her as she fell, her strength finally giving out. I kept my promise, she whispered weakly. I came home. The word home struck Thunderwolf powerfully. Maria had not said she returned to the Apache camp or to his tribe. She had said she came home. Back at the camp, Silver Moon and the other women tended to Maria's immediate needs while Thunderwolf waited, anxiously for her to recover enough to tell her story. When Maria was finally strong enough to sit up and speak clearly, the tribe gathered to hear what had happened during her long absence. The evidence worked, she began. Captain Rodriguez presented my husband's papers to the territorial governor, who launched a full investigation. The men who had been profiting from the conflicts between settlers and Apaches were exposed and arrested. Murmurs of satisfaction ran through the Apache listeners. Justice had been served against those who had caused so much bloodshed. But the corrupt officials had powerful friends, Maria continued. They sent assassins to silence me before I could testify in court. Captain Rodriguez was killed protecting me. The tragic news sobered everyone. The honest soldier had died for his principles. I had to flee into the mountains and live like a hunted animal for weeks, Maria said. I survived by remembering the skills Apache women taught me, how to find water, which plants were safe to eat, how to hide from enemies. Thunderwolf felt a surge of pride that his people's knowledge had helped save Maria's life. The new governor finally gained control of the situation, Maria explained. The assassins were captured and it became safe for me to travel. But I had a choice to make. She looked around at the faces of the Apache people who had become her family. The governor offered me a house in the capital, a pension for my husband's service to justice and protection for the rest of my life. I would have been comfortable and safe among my own people. Thunderwolf felt his chest tighten. Of course Maria would accept such an offer. What rational person would choose the hard life of an Apache tribe over security and comfort in Mexican civilization? I told the governor I was grateful for his offer, Maria continued, but that I already had a home with people who valued me for who I am, not just for what my husband discovered. The words hit Thunderwolf like a physical blow. She had chosen them. Not from desperation or lack of alternatives, but from genuine preference. Sharp Claw stood up and spoke formally. Maria Martinez, I once questioned your place among us. I was wrong. You have proven your loyalty and courage beyond any doubt. I formally request that Chief Thunderwolf grant you full membership in our tribe. Other warriors voiced their agreement. Even some who had been initially suspicious of the Mexican widow now supported her complete acceptance. Thunderwolf realized that this moment would define not just Maria's future, but his own understanding of what made someone truly Apache. Maria, he said formally, you came to us as part of a trade, stayed as a worker, and have returned as family. But tribal membership requires more than affection. It requires a commitment that goes beyond personal choice. Maria stood, despite her exhaustion, to hear his words properly. If you become truly Apache, Thunderwolf continued, you must be willing to fight our enemies even if they are Mexican. You must put tribal welfare above your own safety. You must accept that your children, if you have them, will be raised as Apache warriors or Apache women. I understand, Maria replied steadily. And you must take an Apache name, for Maria Martinez will no longer exist. That woman was traded away for a horse and supplies. The woman who stands before us now is someone new. Thunderwolf looked at his people, seeing their expectant faces. Then he looked back at Maria. If you accept these terms, you will be called Walking Between Worlds, for you have brought wisdom from your former life to strengthen your new one. I accept, Maria said without hesitation. Thunderwolf drew his knife and cut a small lock of Maria's hair, then cut a similar lock from his own. He tied them together and cast them into the fire, symbolizing the joining of her spirit with the Apache people. "Walking between worlds," he announced formally. "You are now my sister, daughter of this tribe, protected by our warriors and bound by our honor." The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. Walking between worlds, the woman who had once been Maria Martinez, was formally adopted into Thunderwolf's own family, making her Silver Moon's sister and Little Fox's aunt. On the final evening of the celebration, Thunderwolf sat with his new sister by the fire, reflecting on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. "Do you ever regret trading Stormrunner?" Walking Between Worlds asked. Thunderwolf considered the question seriously. "I traded a magnificent horse for winter supplies and a servant," he said slowly. "But I gained something far more valuable. A sister who taught me that true strength comes from integrity, not from possessions." Walking Between Worlds smiled. "And I learned that family is not about blood or law, but about people who see your worth and choose to keep you." Thunderwolf nodded, understanding that the trade he had once considered a painful sacrifice had actually been the greatest bargain of his life. He had given up a symbol of power and received something real and lasting, a demonstration that integrity and character were worth more than any treasure. The Apache chief who had once measured his worth by his warhorse and his victories in battle had learned from a Mexican widow that the greatest victories were won not through force, but through the courage to do what was right, even when it cost everything you thought you valued. In the end, both Thunderwolf and Walking Between Worlds had discovered that integrity truly was not a bargain. It was a treasure beyond price.